I'd like to thank the organisers for giving me the title of my presentation. In fact, I didn't understand exactly what this presentation was about, so I've decided to ignore each of those three potential titles and focus in terms of taking where we've got to in the presentation so far and transitioning as best I can into the New Zealand scene. And in doing so, I want to recognise and thank the people who have participated very actively in the development of the science and the development of the strategy of high-value nutrition. So as best I can, I hope I'm reflecting the thought, the insight and the direction that's come so far from a large number of people who've worked tirelessly behind the scenes in developing high-value nutrition. So, in terms of giving this presentation, I've decided to focus on what this is about. This is a national science challenge. And as a national science challenge, what I'd like to do is spend a few moments focusing on us as a nation, so New Zealand. Two is what are some of the major scientific issues that high-value nutrition is focusing, and then to really conclude by presenting where the challenge will and should be into the future. It is a 10-year challenge, and it's a 10-year challenge that's undertaken. Well, it's an 8-year challenge from this point in time, but it's a challenge that's undertaken by a small country located very deep in the South Pacific. New Zealand is blessed in a number of respects. Despite global warming, we receive huge amounts of rain on a very new geographical environment, so we have very rich and remarkable soils. And so as a consequence, we've chopped down a lot of our forests and we have a large number of cows and sheep. And so we have the ability to produce a very interesting and very Caucasian range of food products that we are then trying to sell predominantly into an increasingly affluent Asian market. And so there's always that disconnect between what we produce and necessarily what the market is demanding. And so we don't grow soy, for example, we grow cows, and those cows provide milk. But nonetheless, we have been very successful over the course of the last 3 to 4 decades in developing both our dairy and beef culture. And that is reflected in terms of what we currently export to the world. And so the single biggest sector is the food and beverage sector. This is what New Zealand does, and this is where we make our money, and this is how we have such affluent lifestyles, and this is paying for your salary and my salary. Thank you very much. And you can see that it is predominantly driven in and around our successes in the dairy industry. So the dairy industry is 25% of the largest sector, food and beverage sector, meat making up about 12%, fish 3%, fruits and nuts 3%, and beverages, quite interestingly, wine and a tiny bit of beer, make up about 3% of our total GDP or the export income that's generated from New Zealand. Now, in all of these things, it's recognised that innovation plays a very significant role in developing our economy and all economies around the world. There is an absolute requirement in 2 respects. Respect number 1 is to be first, to be the first mover. And the second is to have the veracity behind you, to have the evidence, the input, the ability to wrap around a regulatory environment that says that you are a preferred high-quality source of this information or this knowledge or this food and beverage. And so when we move from this situation, the government plays a very important role in developing and fostering that innovation cycle. And so high-value nutrition is one of the national science challenges. The Minister has said that there's 11 national science challenges, of which 10 is underway, and you see smack bang in the middle of this very complicated funding matrix is the national science challenges. And if you go down to the very bottom, you can see that they are mission-led, and there is no doubt that they are defined in terms of their mandate. The mandate of high-value nutrition is around delivering food and beverages to the export market that have a validated health claim. And to one side of that, there is investigator-led. That's our ability to have scientists doing what scientists like to do, and that's doing innovative research. On the other extreme, you have industry-led. And industry-led, of course, there is a significant degree of innovation that will come from the industry side of things, and that continuum forms the very complex web that is the funding matrix that the government provides us in terms of our ability to engage in this innovation cycle, particularly this pre-seed innovation cycle. But it hides a couple of things. It hides the fact that we are very much behind the rest of the OECD and developed countries in terms of the amount of funding. Start from one side and go down, and you will eventually get to New Zealand in terms of the amount of funding that's available. This presents an immediate challenge. The immediate challenge is we have to do more with less. If we are to truly drive an innovation economy, if we are truly going to lead the world in the development of food and beverages on the basis of health, we're going to have to do more with less. And we're going to have to do more with less in one additional respect, because there are fewer scientists in New Zealand than just about anywhere else in the world. The investment in the careers and the development of scientists, the ability of scientists to be scientists, lags behind many other parts in the world. And I look around this room, and the vast majority of you have PhDs, but you've seen the light and you've moved on to other things. And so you often view scientists, those few remaining scientists, as some sort of strange hang-on. But it's very important to recognise the opportunities and innovations and the strategy for success in continuing to invest in the careers and the development of those scientists. And it's through that matrix, connecting scientists with industry, with mission, with opportunity, where the success of high-value nutrition will arise. So let me go back and summarise so far. We're a country where commodities continue to dominate our export. We have very low research and development spend. Scientists are few and far between. And one of the significant features of a national science challenge is that we need to foster that innovation by fostering the careers and the development of those scientists. And these are the things that I think are most important in the 21st century when it comes to scientists. We need to operate in an environment where there's both insight, where there is a strategy, but the thing that has defined the development of high-value nutrition to this point is the teamwork. And there needs to be a consistent emphasis on teamwork and mentoring. There are lots of grey hair around this room. There's a number of people without hair, of course. But around this room, we play a very significant role in mentoring the next generation of innovative scientists. Because the point that I want to make in the next part of my talk is that science has exploded in so many ways that it is impossible for one laboratory, one scientist, one group of scientists to adequately seize the challenges that are in front of us. And Bruce alluded to that. He demonstrated the relationships that he had developed in his research, and you could see where that has taken us, or him, and science in general, in terms of understanding the relationship between breast milk and the developing health of that child. So, this is it. We turn the green stuff into the black and white stuff, and we try to sell the black and white stuff to the rest of the world. We have done extremely well around developing the technology, the innovation, the supply chain management, the regulatory environment that enables us to sell fruits, beverages, fish and dairy and meat to the rest of the world. But we need to move beyond that. But when you look at the scientific workforce and what people are doing in New Zealand, and this is a survey that High-Value Nutrition has conducted, you can see the following things. We have a large number of scientists who are invested in food science and technology, a fabulous thing, a very important feature of the development cycle in high-value nutrition. But if you want to move across, you will see that there are tiny dots in understanding the market, understanding consumers. And high-value nutrition is not just about megatrends, it's about understanding the wants, the needs, the aspirations, the desires of people, because we need to convince people to spend more money purchasing something on the basis of a scientifically validated promise. Moving across, when it comes to nutritional sciences and in the far extreme, clinical application, we have a number of areas of strength. New Zealand cannot do it all. It needs to invest in a number of key areas. It needs to align that research as best we can with the opportunities that arise from what we do best, and that's dairy, that's beverages, that's fruits, and that's fish. And we often encounter this when we talk about high-value nutrition. But isn't New Zealand all about 100% pure? Indeed it is. The foundation of what we are as a country, as a commodity supplier, is that we have veracity in what we deliver in terms of commodity. We stand by our commodity. We produce the best commodity foods, the best ingredients. And that 100% pure mantra must continue in terms of the development of high-value nutrition. That's the fundamental brand. On top of that, we have cuisine, we have culture, we have the ability to generate premium branded products. And yes, that is an important part of the overall food and beverage strategy that's required for New Zealand. Do we make the world's best cheese? Yeah, maybe. But do we sell the world's best cheese overseas? We make some fantastic wine. But do we sell the best wine overseas? Do we have people clambering to pay $300, $400, $500 for a bottle of wine? The answer is no. You go to the supermarket and buy it for $12.95 and you'll only pay $13 maximum. So we have, even amongst our most fabulous cuisine-related products, a commodity push rather than a premium cuisine-related push. And the next level further than that is health. Health is our ultimate commodity or our ultimate desire. And so we need to understand the desires, the wants and needs of that discerning healthcare consumer. And so the next part of this talk is to talk about that discerning healthcare consumer and what high-value nutrition aims to do in that space. But here's the challenge. The challenge is that although people rate healthfulness as something that is so important, they always buy on price. Absolutely, fundamentally, convenience and price dominate every time. So what people tell you versus what they do is a big disconnect. But it's there, it's front of mind. So how do you turn behaviours that are entrenched, price, into something where they make choices where we are able as a country to sell a high-value product? So we need to turn wants, likes and needs into purchasing behaviour, and their consumer insight becomes fundamentally important. We know a lot about the megatrends, and I'll talk about the megatrends in 10 seconds, but do we really understand the aspirations, the desires that enable or drive people to choose something as opposed to something else? Why would somebody spend $200 rather than $100? You'd be mad unless it's selling you a very significant promise, and that promise is the veracity of health, the veracity of what it's going to deliver for you, the promise in terms of health. So what are the health opportunities? This is megatrends. The megatrends are, and it's been described so far, Asians are growing old. Asians are getting, or rapidly gaining in weight, and there are distinct differences in the way in which the obesity phenotype plays out in terms of metabolic health, and this will be described later this afternoon. So, there's a rapid growth in the ageing population, there's dramatic changes, and of course the environment is changing very dramatically in Asia. They know that the environment is not what it should be, and that also is driving to fear and concern. The risks and threats of pandemics are overwhelming for many Asian consumers. And of course, China, and as Stefan said, China keeps emerging as the big number, the big thing that we are focused upon, not because China is necessarily the primary market of the innovation, the opportunities for New Zealand. It's just the big dominant economic force that we have the most information on. And yes, healthcare costs are increasing dramatically within that country, and that country, like many other countries within Asia, is a totalitarian state. They can make a decision around the investment of healthcare dollars. They can force the cost back on the consumer in an instant. And so what is provided by the state today is now your responsibility tomorrow. And there is a strong cultural relationship between health status and what you consume. Intrinsically, right throughout our culture and Asian cultures, is a belief that food fundamentally impacts upon our health. And indeed, as a professor of nutrition, if you don't eat, you die. So clearly it is important for your health. But what happens somewhere between modest to maximal amounts of food and beverage and health remains a very significant mystery. So high-value nutrition is engaged in a strategic foresight approach. We tried to identify where we could go in relation to the food health consumer megatrends within Asia. And so those food health megatrends are very clear for us. We understand that they're becoming older, they're becoming obese, that pandemics are increasing. The awareness of the relationship between food and gut health is increasing. We've had enormous success in terms of infant foods, and so why should we not extend that? And we know that people are concerned about their mobility as they age. And so that was built on the strength of our existing research, so what we have in New Zealand already, and where we might go in terms of developing our strategic and priority research investment. So that strategic foresight approach has identified as many weaknesses in our research framework, in what we know and understand, as well as strengths. And understanding our weaknesses and our strengths give us the best opportunity for moving forward and developing first in market, first validated, first mover advantage, innovative economy, innovative opportunities that are going to result in significant consumer persuasion. We need to persuade people. So what is it that we are all focused on? Everybody wants to live a golden and beautiful life. There's no doubt that fundamentally all medical research is focused on longevity. No matter how you slice and dice it, it's about living longer as well as living better. Living longer dominates, but living better is something that underpins the way in which we talk about biomedical research. And we all have aspirations of what we want to be. The reality is one thing, the aspiration is something else. And so, Stefan described the fact that you are not purchasing an airline ticket to sit in a slightly hypoxic environment and eat horrible food for 4 hours flying from Brisbane to Auckland. You are buying a journey, a promise. We need to sell promises. And the promise is the shadow on the wall. And the shadow on the wall is what you want to be, what you need to be, what your friend down the street tells you that they are. It's that environment where you live out and eat out your aspirations. And this has been covered much more extensively by our previous speaker. We don't live alone. While we are dealing with nutrition, we are also dealing with a complex microbiome that inhabits us. We work for them as much as they work for us. In fact, they probably dominate the relationship. And so when we start focusing on nutrition, the importance of the gastrointestinal tract bears out. And over the course of the next 2 days, you will hear lots of presentations that focus on the way in which the gut works, gut discomfort. How do you think about food? You think about food in terms of what you feel like immediately after its consumption. Gut comfort, gut discomfort, irritability are major dominant players in the way in which people think. We live in the post-genomic world. And while all of us can get our heads around the fact that there are about 30 phone books of ACGT, all in some sort of random sequence, turning that linear code into the complex way in which the biology works is what Bruce alluded to, big data. It is something that is beyond the scope of any one laboratory. But understanding the code and the way in which the code works is very necessary for targeting not just N of 1, and N of 1 is very important, but targeting demographics, groups, ethnicities. And so while we can focus on N of 1, we also need to focus on the differences from one population, one ethnicity to the next, because by targeting larger groups, you can develop very significant consumer markets. And we live in the world of precision medicine, large amounts of information can be generated through all sorts of complex technologies. And these complex technologies do not sit inside one laboratory. They sit inside a number of laboratories. New Zealand lags behind the rest of the world in its acquisition and use of this complex imaging technology, the ability to understand physiology non-invasively, because we don't have the industry here that's making these machines. But we have the opportunity to build international relationships so that we can be at the forefront of understanding what goes wrong, how it goes wrong, where it's gone wrong, and then potentially what can be done to intervene. The next significant innovation that's really taking place in terms of physiology, biochemistry and health is the ability to diagnose simply, non-invasively, the use of blood samples, the way in which tissue communicates from one tissue to the next tissue, the way in which you can garner information with respect to two things. One is what you have eaten, your habitual diet. The moment we are stuck in a situation in terms of human nutrition where there is one major black hole in time and space, it's the biggest black hole that affects our entire solar system, because everybody lies. Everybody has a healthy diet. Facts would suggest otherwise. And so we need to have really good, innovative biomarkers of what people eat, honestly, what they eat. And then we need to have biomarkers of what's gone wrong and what's gone right. But I hear this all the time, that diet exerts subtle effects. Individual foods have subtle effects. What a load of trollop. There is no doubt that individual macro and micronutrients have very significant biological effects across a whole raft of different mechanisms, from epigenetic right through to metabolomic, changing your metabolome. And of course, you've got the impact of the bacteria as well. So, your metagenome. And so there is enormous scope to mine and understand what we think we understand already very well. And the answer is no, we do not understand protein. And we are a protein-led economy. We do not understand sufficiently what different proteins, different amino acids do in terms of biological health. We've only started to scratch the surface of those things in plants that are trying to stop us grow, the things in plants that the plants are using to try to ward us off. And we talk about antioxidants. Well, that's just scratching the surface of the complex actions of these biological chemicals. So high-value nutrition sits at a precipice. That precipice is as follows. We want to convince that person to turn left, not right. We want them to reach for the product that comes from New Zealand, not the product that comes from anywhere else in the world. We want to sell a scientifically validated health opportunity. We want to sell them something that is grounded in terms of science. And there's no doubt the National Science Challenge High-Value Nutrition can and will achieve this over the course of the next 8 years. And so this marks the transition in terms of talking about high-value nutrition in the past. Now we're going to dive in and talk about the development, the complexity of high-value nutrition in terms of the science that's underway and the regulatory landscape that we all play in. Thank you very much.